One day this fall, my beloved yoga teacher named Allison Kramer at Laughing Lotus, she had a note for us during yoga practice. It was a note for yoga and a note for life. She said, change is possible. And if you don't believe me, look at your life 5 years ago and look at it now. And those sentences just stopped me because I'm the kind of person who overthinks personal growth. I am always thinking about how can I live my best life? What can I do better? And is change really happening at all? And in those moments where she had us think about 5 years back to now, I couldn't help but think of the pages I could fill about how different I was 5 years ago to who I am now. And I thought about that because when I was reading today's scripture for the first time, there was this part of me that said, no way. Really? Like, I just had to take a step back because it's talking about a new creation. It's talking about creating a new heaven and a new earth. I'm about to create Jerusalem, a city, as a joy, and people as a delight. And it ends with, the wolf and the lamb shall feed together. They shall not hurt or destroy on my holy mountain, says the Lord. And the closing image is one where peace prevails. Now, there's always a skeptical part of me that flares up when I read scripture like this, because it sounds too good to be true. And then I take a step back and I realize, okay, this is a vision. This is a vision and a prayer about creating something new. But the part that really stuck with me was the last part, about a wolf and a lamb on the mountainside, eating peacefully together. And then I asked myself, what would it mean for the wolf and the lamb to be at peace in your own heart? Because real change will not happen until we have peace within our own heart. Now, that alone can be something Hercules might have problems with. Peace in our own hearts. I don't know about you, but there might be a myriad of things that might not give us peace in our own hearts. There could be a parent we haven't forgiven. There could be our minds could spin about a situation at work, or there could be student loan debt or credit card debt. There could be a relationship that just didn't turn out the way we wanted it to. There could be a health diagnosis that scares us, or we may wonder if we'll ever really be paid enough to live in this city. We may face grief from losing a job or confusion for looking for work. That's a lot. There's so much going on in our mind and so much unresolved conflict in our hearts that sometimes it's hard. Sometimes we grapple with imagining a better world for the world, let alone ourselves. In the beginning of 2009, I was like most of America. I was a word that I did not utter, but I was unemployed. So if you would have met me, and I came to this church at that time, I did not tell a soul because I had a lot of shame about it, even though almost all of America was unemployed in 2009. And I can remember viscerally when it started, okay, I'm gonna come back to that story, but when it started, I was talking to my mentor on the phone and she said, Christina, what a great opportunity you have. When else are you gonna have all this time that you can just create what you wanna create? It's this time for you to reimagine your life. And I was like, okay, I really wanna do that, but I'm not quite there yet. But I took her advice, and in the mornings, I would do these meditations where I would imagine the kind of life I might wanna live into. I used a lot of Louise Hay's, You Can Heal Your Life. And she has these prayers about imagining working in a place where you are respected and you respect those around you. Imagine working in a place that you use all your gifts. Imagine working in a place in a setting you enjoy. And I prayed it for months in the morning. In a way, I guess it was asking for what I wanted, but I was feeling a little bit lost and a little bit without a compass at the time. And there was for the first time in my life, I also was experiencing what it was like without all the money to pay all my bills. So I got unemployment checks, and for the first time in my life, I couldn't pay it all. So I a little bit went on a credit card debt because there was health insurance to be paid for, and transportation and food, and it just wasn't covering it all. But you would have never heard me say that to anyone. And so, because the vulnerability is not my strong suit. So I came into church one Sunday, and I think I was sitting back there in front of the last couple on the edge. And Jackie was preaching, and the end of her sermon, Jackie Lewis is our senior minister, the end of her sermon, she usually comes down the aisle, and she's off book completely. And she said, "When you don't have hope anymore, I have it for you." And I thought to myself, well, that's a relief, because I don't have hope today. So I'm glad you got that for me. And I've been thinking about this word hope this week because Anne Lamott was also on TV recently promoting her recent book, and she was talking about the word hope. She says, hope makes you vulnerable. If your heart is open, it is going to get bruised and knocked around the world, and life is going to knock you around. But to hope is to be a child again. Hope is to be vulnerable again instead of going, whatever. To be an armor is what the world teaches us to do, to have a strong surface, to have a shell. But when you are in hope, you are kind of like the snail between shells, and you are trying to get from this bad, dark, scary place to a place where you can breathe, where you can get sunlight on your skin and air on you, and it'll be okay. She said, 100% of my experience, I've been okay. She's been okay after the storms. The phrases that sing back to me after Anne Lamott's great quote are that to hope is to be a child again, and to hope is to be vulnerable again. When we're children, we rattle off our dreams. When I was 12 years old, I was going to work for Oprah Winfrey. And I bet you all had a dream when you were 12 years old that you wanted so earnestly, or maybe you have it now. There are periods in our lives, though, where we take a little break from hope because there's not quite peace in our heart. That wolf and that lamb aren't quite sleeping. But peace isn't something bought. It's not something bought with a new job or a relationship. It's not like one day you swipe your debit card and you own it. Peace is a constant maintenance project. For me, it's a daily conversation with God. I used to think daily meditation and prayer were for people far more disciplined than me. But I've discovered in recent years that surrendering whatever thoughts or concerns are swirling in my mind liberates me. And seeking God's peace and stillness anchors me. And from that place, possibility is born. This text is also calling us to live out beyond our own dreams and to be dreaming about our cities and our world around us, creating something new. During this period, this is all happening in the year 2009, I was invited to John and Jackie's apartment. Reverend Jackie Lewis, Ph.D., is our senior minister. Reverend John Jenka is her husband. They live in the East Village, and I didn't know they knew my name. And I was invited with Natalie Runyon, who I don't think is here tonight, and 10 other of us were imported because there weren't enough tonight there's a lot of young adults, but at the time there weren't enough young adults for them to have a focus group about young adults. So we went over that evening, and John and Jackie shared their vision of the Middle Project. Tonight is Middle Project Sunday. And they talked about gathering a bunch of young professionals who were dreaming about a better world. And they talked about what would it be like if we really talked about race, like had a real discussion about it. And what would it be like if we talked about how we negotiate conflict or navigate change, because it's all the time. And I got so hooked to this idea because it energized me to be thinking about having these kind of conversations with people of faith, people who wouldn't, sometimes get stuck in their own thinking, but be out of the box and solutions. And so I left that night. I got on the elevator. I walked down to the subway, I called my cell phone to my best friend and I said, when I retire, I want to work for the Middle Project. I couldn't, because I loved it so much. 2009 unfolded in its beauty and challenges. So I got a freelancing gig in May, and I freelanced a lot of the year. And I also faced appendicitis and other things. But at the end of the year, I got a job offer, and then I was invited to drinks with our senior pastor, and I thought that was odd, but of course I would say yes. And she offered at the end of that discussion, she offered for me to be the director of communications for the Middle Project and help launch this new vision. Now, this was a dream that was a little bit outside of even what I could dream for. Because I want to tell you that even when you're dreaming, God is dreaming a bigger dream for you than you can dream for yourself. God is at work, my friends. And when you are in conversation with him, you may hear his voice a little louder. And even if you're not in conversation with him, he's going to show up, or she's going to show up all the time. The Middle Project launched about 2 years ago, it launched, we had our first class in 2010. And I have been enriched by the vibrance of these young adults. Some of them have moved to Iowa to work on the 2012 presidential campaign. Some volunteered countless hours to New York City candidates. I'm looking at some people who did that. Another produced her own cabaret in New York City. Another moved to London to pursue education. One is writing their own album. One helped start their own fashion company. Another started her own mindfulness business. They have mentored teenagers. They've been key people in Sandy relief. The list is downright inspiring. But to do these kinds of things, they had to take their own personal healing really seriously. They had to take their own personal peace as one of their first priorities, and able to unfold things that might seem scary and might not seem like they have hope for in the beginning. I have these myriad of stories, and they're sort of like cards you deck out, and like I just have so many stories. So I had a hard time knowing what kind of story to share with you tonight. And I have been very blessed, but this is the one that I chose, towards the end of this. For years, I hoped to, I would pass this building in New York City that it's called the Hearst Corporation. It has glass doors. It's in Midtown on 57th Street. And when you look in the windows of the Hearst building, it's glass, and right behind it is a waterfall, and the escalators go right above the waterfall. And last fall, because when you're with this kind of group of people, of big dreamers, you can't help but not dream yourself. So last fall, I wrote an essay, and I sent it off to Hearst Corporation. And who did I send it to but the Oprah magazine? My 12-year-old dream. Just wanted to get it published. And I got an email back. Holy smokes. I got an email back. And it said, Dear Ms. Fleming, who calls me that? No one. We got your work. We don't want to publish it, but I want to talk to you. And I had been walking past that door for years, visualizing I would be the one invited on that escalator. And then I was. I was invited on that escalator, and I got to the top, and I sat in the cafeteria, and I talked to someone for 45 minutes about my writing. And she told me why it wouldn't be published, and she told me what I could do. And I'm sharing that story because it shows both that what you ask for, I asked to go up that escalator. I got up that escalator. But then something stopped me called the fear of failure. don't know if you've ever been there, but I live there sometimes. And I didn't take any of her notes. I mean, I took her notes, but I have not touched that piece. It's been a year. So what I'm saying is it's not all about God showing up. It's about us showing up, and I don't always show up. I really, really, really always try to show up for my job, but for myself, I don't always show up. But God is listening, because you don't get up those darn escalators without God. I mean, why did she email me? Okay. So, this summer, I was having lunch in this neighborhood with a friend of mine, and she was sharing with me about, she was kind of angry with God because she hadn't had a child yet. And I listened to her, and I said, well, what if you didn't have a child the traditional way? Like, what if you adopted? Or maybe you're going to mentor people who are so going to be your children. Because I have a lot of women, hello, mentors, who mentor me who never had children. And they are like second mothers to me. And she heard what I was saying about thinking outside the box, and then she got a little like, so what about your dreams? So do you think God is listening to you? She got a little feisty. And I said, okay, let's rewind. When I was 12, I wanted to work for Oprah Winfrey. Why did I want to do that? I wanted to do that because I wanted to be in a place that was rooted in transformation. I wanted to be in a place that would share stories of how the world is different. I wanted to do that because stories change people. All right, fast forward. What am I doing now in my life? I'm communications director for a place that is solely about transformation. So do you think that God has not more than fulfilled my dreams? I'm not. It's like if I was working for Ms. Winfrey, I'd be in an editing suite and like traveling around the country. But I wouldn't be in small groups hearing your intimate stories. I wouldn't be able to start the middle project. So sometimes God helps us do more than we can imagine. Because my vision wasn't big enough for God, so God gave me a different reality. Do you know what I mean? So we're all about tools at the middle project, so I'm just going to give some and then close it out. But so consider carving out some time in your life for more peace. Allow yourself vulnerability to name what you want, not only for your own life, but for the world. Be willing to fail, because I'm not good at that, so I hope you are. Be willing to let go of the outcome, because it's not going to show up how your 12-year-old mind thinks it will. List all the miracles you've lived, and if you can't think of any, you're breathing. Be willing to seek out people who are dreamers and have a faith that is not centered in their own ego or their own fear, but in a higher power. And be rooted. I mean, why not? Be rooted in spiritual community. It's right here. It might take a little vulnerability, but you can do it, because we all can step in that. Thich Nhat Hanh, in 2009, I walked into the Manhattan Center, and he was speaking, but what I left with was this image I took on my phone of a piece of calligraphy that said, breathe. You have arrived. You've not arrived once all your credit cards are paid off, or your student debt, or you're married, or you have kids. You haven't arrived when all the things society wants us to have, like the better job title or whatever it is. Right now, you have already arrived. Before you've written that book, before you want that book to be on the bestseller of the New York Times, you've already arrived. Breathe. You have arrived. And from that mantra that Thich Nhat Hanh so generously gave all of us, we can create other new things because we are already at peace, because we have arrived. And if you begin to let that sink in, it might shift a few things. The song that Allison and these amazing, amazing musicians are going to sing next is called Seasons. And it's about how this is your season. This is your season. Now, all of 2009, I wouldn't have said it was my season, but it took all of that to walk into a new season in my life. And this is your time. It is your time, dreamers, because I know you're working so hard. I want you to let go a little bit and let God move through, because this is your season.